Good afternoon and welcome to this first post-summer break FBF online seminar. My name is Pierre Schlosser. I'm the scientific coordinator of the Florence School of Banking and Finance. And it's a real pleasure for me to welcome you to today's online seminar on the digitalization of money. I'm very glad to welcome our lead speaker of today, Jean-Pierre Landau. Jean-Pierre, bonjour. I will not go at length on your biography as it is available on our website, but I would like to highlight that you are currently affiliated to SciencesPo Paris and the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Also, I think that it helps to situate the debate to specify that you've been Deputy Governor of Banque de France from 2006 to 2011, and that you have been entrusted last year by the French Finance Minister, if I recall well, to draw up a report on crypto assets. Voilà. So many thanks also to my colleague Jan, who has prepared the seminar and is managing our online platform as we speak. I don't need to flag ex ante how topical the subject of our online seminar is. We all have read about the ups and downs of Facebook's Libra consortium project. It got indeed a lot of media attention. I think, however, that a much broader perspective is required to understand the deeper drivers and possible pathways of money digitalization, and I'm therefore very glad, also personally, to learn about this from Jean-Pierre today. Before telling you more about our audience, I'd like to inform you about our school's upcoming activities. Some of them will be of interest to you, or if not, also to your colleagues. So you will know by now that the Florence School of Banking and Finance, FBF in short, is a non-national training platform which is part of the European University Institute. The EUI is a public, international, intergovernmental, actually also, research and education institute. And our School of Banking and Finance, which is based at the EUI, boasts a diversity of policy debate and training activities, meaning that the online seminars, of which we have one today, are only one of the many activities and services that we offer. For example, our ebook of this year, which is going to be on the European financial infrastructures, taken broadly, will be out in late September and will feature a variety of insightful contributions from top experts on extraterritorial sanctions, debt restructuring, and the European safe assets, to give some flavor to that ebook. Like always, it will be available for free on our website. On the executive education side of things, our school has been training more than 2,300 participants coming from 70 countries and a series of organizational backgrounds since its creation in 2016. Trained institutions include the ECB, the European Central Bank, Banque de France, the Central Bank of Iceland, the Bank of Korea, the Austrian Financial Markets Authority, to name only a few. Looking ahead, we have a series of courses lined up over the next months, which may be of interest to you or colleagues. We'll have a quantitative course on macroprudential policy with Enrique Mendoza from the University of Pennsylvania. That's late September. In October, we'll host a course on valuation in derivative markets with Professor McDonnell, who is a leading expert really from Kellogg School of Management, Northwestern University, and also from Fabrizio Planta from ESMA. We'll have also a course on prudential risks and policies in the European insurance sector with instructors from ESRB, IOPA, and the National Bank of Belgium. And in November, we'll have a course on fintech, which is close to being fully booked actually, with Professor Philippe Pech from LSE and several senior policymakers. As a general recommendation, do not wait for the last moment to register to our courses. If you'd like to be guaranteed a seat, let me specify this. You can find more details on all activities on our website and on our LinkedIn page, which has now hundreds of followers, and where you will be able to keep track of the school's weekly podcasts and receive periodic information on our numerous activities. So do have a look if you are on LinkedIn. Okay, so I think it's time to thank you for your patience, for being there also, of course, and to introduce you to one another. Since you don't see each other, I will do the presentations as we usually do. You are around 150 participants connected today, following us from almost everywhere in Europe and from several other continents. 50 nationalities are represented. We're very glad to count on several participants from the ECB, the European Commission, the Reserve Bank of South Africa, ESMA, as well as from several other central banks, some law firms, and private banks. A special Willkommen goes to Hamburg, Germany, where we know that the special collective streaming of this online seminar has been arranged for scholars and students of their new program of law, finance, and technology. So welcome also to our friends in Hamburg. But of course, let me also say hello to the remaining participants from the organizations listed and not listed here. So in terms of balance, we have an average professional experience of 8.5 years. Gender-wise, 42% of you are women, 58% are men. And this time, 47% of you are trained economists, 28% are lawyers, some with a background in business. And as always, we have a more strong prominence of people with a master's degree and some with a PhD and a bachelor degree. So let's start. How will our seminar be organized, structured? Well, we'll ask Jean-Pierre to speak for about 20-25 minutes, and his talk will be supported by 3 polls, which will appear on your screen, like always, for you then to fill in. And then following Jean-Pierre's presentation, we'll open up the Q&A session, where you participants will have a chance to write your questions. Think of them maybe in advance, or it can be also comments. It doesn't need to be questions necessarily. You put that in the chat box that will appear at the bottom of your screen, and Jean-Pierre will then engage. Okay, so let me stop here and leave the floor to Paris. I don't know if it's Rue Saint-Guillaume or somewhere else, but very happy again to have you, Jean-Pierre.
Well, thank you, Pierre, and thank you, Jan, for the opportunity to make this presentation. This is both an output of, as you said, the paper I wrote for the report I wrote for the French Minister of Finance, and some papers I'm currently working on with 2 professors of Princeton, Marcus Bruno Meyer and Harold James. In introduction, I would say that, of course, it's pretty obvious now that digitalization, which has changed a lot in our society, in our economy, is now enabling true monetary innovations. Not only payment innovations, but really true monetary innovations. And this is something that central bankers are not very comfortable with. They have difficulties acknowledging that fact. And the word that you use, Pierre, in your presentation, crypto assets, is actually actively promoted by a lot of central bankers, because it's still very hard for them to talk about cryptocurrencies and to acknowledge that there are some kind of monetary innovations, whether advisable or dangerous, which are going on. So clearly, we're going to try and discuss that. And clearly, the forms of money, new forms of money are appearing. The forms of money are changing. And the big question I think we should all think about is whether it's only a question of small technological change in the form of money, or whether we are facing a deeper transformation in monetary arrangements, monetary policy, and monetary institutions. I don't have the answer to that question, but I think this is the kind of analytical challenge we are facing, and that we should address. Both, I would say, from an ethical perspective and maybe a little bit of speculation, intellectual speculation. So the first thing maybe we could discuss is, what do we call digital money? Because after all, we've been living in a world where almost all money, except for notes and coins, is in electronic form. So what's new? My definition of digital money is a combination of 2 things. First, a network. So we have networks, which are basically protocols built on the internet, which allow people to communicate and to transfer information. And then we have a new form of money appearing, which are digital tokens. So a token is a payment instruments which allow peer-to-peer payment, peer-to-peer transaction without an intermediary. We've known about tokens for a long time. We have physical tokens. Banknotes and coins are actually physical tokens. But technology makes it possible now to devise and to construct and to build digital tokens. So a digital token is a file with a value attached to it and a name. And by cryptographic means, people can access the file. The holder of the file can access it, change the name, and then a payment is made. So it's a very very big progress, which has been allowed enabled by the change in technology, the change in cryptography, actually the progress in cryptography, and which allows peer-to-peer payments to be made securely, provided the necessary infrastructure is there, on the internet and on any kind of network, without, irrespective of distances, borders, or destination. So that's a big change, and we are all able now, in theory, technically, to make peer-to-peer payments over the internet in a secure way, without a third party. This is very adapted to a digital world when both households and sometimes companies, corporates, and banks need to transact very quickly in a matter of seconds or milliseconds and nanoseconds with no counterparty risk. So, for instance, we see now token money used by banks for operating and executing some interbank transaction in a matter, again, of nanoseconds. So digital money defined as network plus token, and tokens moving and transferring value on those networks. That is an instrument. That is a technical payment instrument. That technical payment instrument is consistent with a multiplicity of monetary arrangements and infrastructure. So in the next slide, I have put possibly two of them, which you can find today for all of us who are using mobile money. So, but they are very different in their conception. So if you look on the left-hand side, you have what is called a wallet, which is called in the European terminology a payment service provider. So you have a firm to which you give the ability to access your bank account and to move money on your bank account on your instructions. So in that case, the payment service provider provides you some tokens that you store on your mobile, but those tokens, or your terminal, and those tokens are just a mirror of your bank account. So you still have a direct relationship with your bank, and the payment service provider helps you just to sort of move money around from your mobile or your terminal. On the right-hand side, you have a very different architecture, which is called electronic money. This is what an e-money issuer is. And the fashionable term for that today is stable coins. But these are exactly, I would say, the same instruments, the same architecture. And as you see here, the tokens that we have on our mobiles are a reflection of an overall sort of huge bank account, which the e-money issuer holds with a bank. And so we can exchange token without having any kind of contact with our bank. This is basically the M-Pesa system. This is also the system that Tencent and Alipay have been introducing in China and developing extensively in China. So it's pretty clear looking, and there are many other architectures which are possible and which may arise with the development of technology. We can talk about it during the questions. This is clearly the bank is in a very different position on those two architecture. Again, on the left-hand side, you have a direct relationship with your bank, and the banks keep your deposit in your account. On the right-hand side, it is the e-money issuer who has the relationship with the bank. You may don't know the bank, and you may, as in the case of M-Pesa in Kenya, dispense with a bank account altogether. So the big question, which I think in a prospective way coming out of this is, can we in the future with digital money developing, have life without a bank? I would say it's possible, but it's not certain. It's possible because as some e-money issuers have shown and have proved, people can very much live with money on their mobile without a bank account. And in the future, and still already now, you can have an app in your phone and manage your finance totally on your phone with some kind of money market fund account or investment asset account, and you can move money from your investment account to your money account without even getting in touch with a bank or bank deposit. So that's life without a bank. And of course, you could also have a bank and still use the bank account as a backup to your own tokens on your mobile. So the big question for me is whether there will be a life without a bank. I think it has at least three components. There is obviously a competitive component. I think the banks are very much aware of the stakes, so they are developing fast payment system, contactless payment system with your credit card. There is a regulatory aspect to it, which is very important. I think up to now, the regulators have been very, very benign and indifferent to what's happening in e-money. But with Libra and other possible big actors intervening in that sector, they will have to make decisions, and they will have to make decisions on the kind of competition they want between banks and e-money issuers. I see that especially in Europe as a major regulatory challenge in the short run. And finally, it will depend on the sociology and how the young generations will react when they are facing the possibility of a life without a bank. Basically, a 12 years old kid today, will he or she in 8 to 10 years worry to open a bank account if they have on their mobile all the possibility to have an ordinary financial life without a bank account? So that leads us to my first poll question, I think. Do you think it will be possible in the future that people will live without a bank in advanced economy? It's pretty clear that it's happening already in emerging economies. What about advanced economy? We have a pretty balanced opinion. Very interesting. So I look forward to further discussions on that. But I think for the banks, it's a big question, a big challenge, and I'm sure some of them would be very interested to know about your reaction. Moving now to the next slide, and it sounds a little bit sort of ambitious and pretentious to ask this question, whether digitalization will reshape the international monetary system. But actually, we're talking about networks, we're talking about digital networks, we're talking about networks which are intrinsically cross borders. So they don't know about borders, they don't know about limitations. And we're talking about a system which is organized around tokens and platforms, which are truly sort of ecosystems. So if you look at what Tencent is doing, Alipay, and what obviously is Libra's ambition, they want to create an ecosystem with the payment function at the core of the system. Now, in such systems, the basic thing, I think, it's easier to pay inside than outside. So the payment links and the monetary links inside are easier. Price comparison, price discovery, money conversion is much easier inside than outside, especially if the tokens are specific to the system and cannot be easily exchanged outside of it. So we thought about calling that a digital currency area, meaning that in this environment, digital interconnectedness supersedes any kind of other macroeconomic or financial interconnectedness that you could have in a more normal environment. And we think that this kind of digital currency area, we, Marcus Grüner-Meyer, Harold James, and myself, we have published a VoxEU column on that in July. We think this is going to be very important. It is going to be cross-border, and it will sort of segment domestic economies according to the payment network, and it will also create new areas which will be again transnational and cross-border. Tencent has 700 million users, Alipay has 600 millions. I think Facebook, if Libra is created, will have more than 1 billion users. So these are populations which are the size of national economies, and people can very much have a fully fledged financial and monetary life inside those networks. So these are truly, I think, digital currency areas. Note that they can have their own unit of account, as Libra is ambitioning to do, or they can use existing official unit of account and especially only have a sort of specific medium of exchange in the form again of token. So DCA, digital currency area, may, and in our view, will reshape the international monetary system in that way. And if you think about how currency becomes international, there's a huge debate which has been revived recently by all the literature about the dominant currency. But I think most economists would say that you become an international currency because you're used as a trade, as a medium of exchange internationally, and progressively you become a reserve asset and an invoicing currency, a vehicle currency. So obviously, if you can sort of trigger the internationalization of a currency through digitalization and through digital network, you may have an additional instrument, and I'm thinking of countries which don't have deep financial markets and which cannot offer reserves assets to others, but you may have an instrument to progressively extend the use of your own national currency as a medium of exchange and as a unit of account in invoicing international trade. That's what we call digital dollarization. We think everybody is exposed, every country is exposed to that kind of digital dollarization, but especially, of course, emerging economy, and those emerging economies whose monetary regime is not considered as very robust, who already are partially or totally dollarized, those one could be very much dollarized in terms of digitalization network. Most recently, this is the last bullet point of these slides. You may have heard that Mark Carney, the governor of Bank of England, like a week ago, mentioned the possibility for governments and nation states to create together a sort of new synthetic digital currency, which would reintroduce some symmetry into the international monetary system and would be able to attenuate the dominant position of the dollar. So that's an example of the kind of flexibility and versatility that a token plus network economy allows you to do. It offers a very wide field to monetary innovation, and it's kind of interesting to see that a major central banker in the world now has sort of embraced this kind of innovation in his thinking to promote some new ideas in terms of international monetary system. Moving now, of course, to the topic that Pierre mentioned at the beginning, which is the case of Libra, but it's not only Libra. Could we have private digital currency competing with official currencies in the future? And does digitalization enables easier private competition? I would say very briefly that yes, if we look at currencies as medium of exchange. So a digital currency is seen as a medium of exchange, a private digital currency is seen as a medium of exchange, could in the future efficiently compete with official currency. Because in a digital world, first, network effects are much bigger. So if you have a network, and if you introduce a currency on that network, which is basically what Libra ambitions to do, then you can immediately gain broad acceptance, and you can achieve in a few days or weeks what took in the 19th century years to achieve, which is broad acceptance of a new payment and currency instrument. If, however, your currency becomes used as a store of value, things become much more complicated, and without entering the details, the drivers of the demand for a store of value, of course, are very different from the drivers from demand of a medium of exchange. There is clearly a sort of quote-unquote speculative element to it, which may introduce a volatility in the demand and the value of your currency. And most likely, you will need, as an issuer, to have some kind of backing for the currency. I won't elaborate on that, but backing means you have to devote or to earmark some resources to be able to support your currency. And if you're a private issuer, and if you're doing that, of course, that means that you commit part of all of your balance sheet to supporting the currency that you use. And then you put yourself in a situation where your solvency, as assessed by your shareholders and the stock market, may depend on the demand of your currency. That's a very, very fragile equilibrium to be in. And that's why I think Libra has opted, and this is the last bullet point of this slide, to have a backing which is a sort of traditional commodity financial backing, and to issue a currency which will be backed by other assets, fully backed, so that their balance sheet and themselves is not seen as backing the currency. So in short, yes, private currency will compete or can compete with official currency as a medium of exchange. If they try to compete as store of value, it may be much more difficult. And that's why the stablecoin idea is today so fashionable, because after all, stablecoin is a currency fully backed by financial or real assets. Monetary policy. Oh, sorry. We had a question there. Do you think that Libra should be allowed to develop and grow? Which is, of course, the big question today. Again, pretty balanced result. It's very interesting. Very interesting. Okay. I look forward to a very interesting discussion at the end. Monetary policy should central bank be worried about the ability to conduct monetary policy in a digital currency world? This actually is not a new question. And when e-money first appeared like 20 years ago, there was a huge discussion between academics and major central bankers as to whether digitalization or electronization of money would reduce or eliminate the demand for central bank money, and doing so would make central banks powerless. This was synthesized in a formula by Professor Benjamin Friedman from Harvard, who said maybe central banks are becoming an army with only a signal corps, meaning that all they have left as a tool is communication. But otherwise, since there is no demand for central bank money, they don't have any tools to influence the economy. That, of course, has proven wrong. Central bank money has never been as demanded as now. It's actually, as you know, much bigger part of the GDP than it used to be 10 years ago. The balance sheets of the central bank are huge, and central banks are actually very comfortable in setting monetary conditions. They changed their monetary framework, their monetary policy framework, and most of them now, in an environment of excess reserves, are using the interest on reserves as the main policy tool. So the concerns that the demand for central bank money would disappear as far as the bank's reserves are concerned has proven unfounded. And also there has been a theoretical objection to that worry by Woodford, who said as long as the central bank is able to issue liabilities denominated in the currency, then they can set interest rates and they can operate monetary policy. This has been proven true. So the idea that the central banks are powerless in a digital environment is and has been proved unfounded, with one caveat and one assumption, which is that the unit of account is the liability of the central bank. So if the unit of account is the liability of the central bank, if a dollar is a dollar in an account of the Fed, or if a euro is a dollar deposited by banks or held by banks as a reserve at the ECB, then setting the condition and interest rate on that dollar, on the euro, is enough. But that means that the unit of account is considered as robust. And that robustness of the unit of account, which may have been taken for granted over the last decade and century, the big question I think we should ask now is, in a digital environment, where, as I said, people are maybe holding money in a much more diverse form, and there will be business incentive to segment the monetary system into different digital currency area. Can we still think that the unit of account will be as robust as it was in the past? This is a highly speculative question. We may present some reflection in our papers, but I personally I am not totally certain that that the unit of account will be as robust in the future as it was in the past. First, cash may disappear, and actually cash is disappearing in a lot of economies. And so in a cashless economy, it means that you and me as a household, we don't hold public money anymore. And the equivalence and convertibility we have in our minds between privately issued money by banks and in the future by e-money issuers and public money will not exist because we won't have public money anymore. It's very interesting to see that, for instance, in the Nordic countries where cash is disappearing at a fast rate, the central banks are very, very aware of what is at stake, and that the disappearance of access of the general public to public money is considered as something of a question and interrogation to be held. So basically, it's not clear to me, but this is a personal opinion. It's not clear to me that in an environment, in a digital economy, when the only money that people will hold is privately issued in a digital form, whether they will still be counting in dollars, in euro, is not clear. And although people are not very specific about that, I think it's one of the major reasons why people have been so negative and reacting so negatively on Libra, because Libra is creating a new unit of account. So it's a new currency, full-fledged, based on a basket of existing currency, but still a new unit of account. So if in an economy you have 2 billion people starting to pay and count in a totally new unit, you have to wonder what will happen in the way contracts will be denominated, in the way wage will be denominated, in the way debt will be denominated. And of course, the authorities have a lot of tools to impose or to consolidate a unit of account. They can have the legal standard, they can issue debt denominated in their own unit of account, they can ask for taxes to be paid and denominated in a unit of account. But still, I think it's a question for the future, and I think this question is becoming more and more apparent since the Libra project has been launched. And for me, that's the very reason why central banks should consider very positively the launch of a central bank digital currency. There is a lot of debate, of which you are aware, about two issues on CBDC. The first one is whether they would allow to circumvent the zero lower bound by putting a negative interest rates or a tax on the currency. If the currency is in digital form, it's easier than in physical form, of course. And the second debate is about the risk of financial stability if the central bank issue a currency which is a very close substitute to bank deposit or other private form of electronic money, and then runs become more possible in a crisis time, and the cost of funding for banks is higher even in normal time. I think these are interesting debates, but these are, in my view, and this is a very personal opinion, of secondary order of importance. The most important choice for central bank is, if money becomes digital, can they afford not to have their own issued money aimed at the general public, which is not in digital form itself? And I think, in my view, the answer is no. As a citizen, I would be very, very worried not to have access to central bank public money. And I think for financial stability and monetary stability, having only private money in the hand of the general public with no possibility of converting it into public money might be going into a very uncharted territory. And so, to quote one major central banker, I think central banks have the duty to give money to the general public in a form in line with their preferences. And if their preferences go to digital, then the central banks have to go to digital as well. Obviously, there are many choices to be made, but if we want to minimize the risk to financial stability, then central bank digital money currency should not be a substitute to bank deposit, so it should not carry interest. It should be a complement. It should be as close as possible to cash, so it should be in token form. And my guess is that a lot of central banks are studying that possibility right now with a lot of technical difficulties. There might not be urgency, but I sense that the choice may be very important now, whether they consider it positively or negatively. I think they should consider it positively. There's one big question, and it's very interesting to see how money and technology forces us to rethink a lot of things. A tokenized central bank digital currency may be anonymous. It's possible, technically, but it may be also non-anonymous. And so the relationship between privacy, anonymity, and money is something that we will have to grapple with in a digital environment. I think I'm finished, and I would like to come with finally repeat as a final question the first one I asked. Are we just facing a sort of minor technological hiccup, which will need adjustment to our payment system and the way we organize payments? Or are we facing a bigger challenge and a bigger destabilization of our monetary arrangements and our monetary policy? Thank you very much.
This was extremely interesting and insightful, thought-provoking at times too. I think it will spark some controversy too. So I invite everyone to type their questions. I wanted to ask you one, if you could tell us a bit more about what your book, because I think you picked up on some of the aspects that you will cover in your book with Bruno, Maya, and James. Can you tell us a bit more about what was the idea behind the book? Was it also, I mean, was it purely sort of intellectual, scientifically driven, or was it also to raise more awareness among the central banking community, which I think is obviously quite conservative on those topics and has been a bit more on the defensive side for quite some time, to sort of offer a way forward to there?
Well, thank you very much, Pierre. First, in the first stage, it will be a paper. maybe a book will come later, but we're already struggling to produce a paper. So,
okay.
And second, I think it's just at this stage pure technological, pure intellectual interest. I think we clearly, if I had to give an answer to my own question, I would rather go to the second point. We clearly think that technology is changing a lot in the way we will look at money and in the way we will live with money. And so we just wanted to explore analytically those changes. Some of us are more interested in the issue of currency competition. So the kind of libertarian aspect of encouraging competition is present in the mind of some of us. Some of us are more interested in the public versus dollarization. And how you know, Harold James is an economic historian, and of course, having a constant, because a lot of technological change is not new in money. So knowing how in the past monetary system have adjusted to technological shocks is very important as well. Yeah. So to answer your question, no, we're not trying to twist or influence and push on the public debate. The things I said in my last slides on CBDC are clearly my personal opinions. I'm not sure the co-authors would share that opinion. Even the analytical underpinnings of that opinion, I'm not sure they will share it. But I believe strongly the case, and I think if I still was a central banker, I would push very hard in that direction.
Okay. Thanks a lot for that. So we have the poll results that have been put down by Jan on the chat box. What I suggest we do is that maybe we take up first a few questions which have been formulated, and then towards the end we can conclude with a brief analysis, if you don't mind, of the poll results. So starting with Dimitri, who is saying, do you think that tokenization is the emergence of the new post-Bretton Woods system? that surprisingly reminds somehow the old gold standard, especially these stable coins projects.
So I think clearly I would be as categorical at that, but there is clearly that possibility. There is clearly that possibility. And if you read Mark Carney's speech last week in Jackson Hole, at the end, he comes clearly with the same kind of idea. So that speech is especially clear on the asymmetry of the current international monetary system, on the abnormality of the dollar position considering the weight of the US in the global economy, and on the possibility of technology to bring a solution to that. Whether we are on a gold standard or not, clearly tokens, if, and it's a big if, I should have insisted more about it, if underpinned by a proper legal framework. Tokens offer the possibility to diversify the form of backed money. After all, the gold standard is one example, salient example of money which is backed by a commodity. Libra, if it develops, will be currency backed by financial assets and other currencies. So the idea that you could use back tokens, which is the idea of stable coins or e-money as well, yes, this idea is there, and it may have impact on international monetary relation. But I should have insisted more that it's easier to draw the architecture, to think about it. It's much more difficult to implement it in a way which is legally robust in a multiplicity of countries. That's why Libra, I think, will need some kind of approval by authorities, because it's supposed to be convertible or backed by assets, but the modality, I mean, holding something totally immaterial in your mobile, you want to be sure that you can convert it. And that depends on your legal rights, and your legal rights depends on the legal framework that will be put into place by authorities.
Okay, I think that your answer links up very well with a question that Anna Maria had, which is she's asking about the difference between the Libra and the proposal of Carney. So she's asking what exactly is different. Is it private versus public, and where is the power of sovereign money in this?
Yeah, I think Mark Carney has been both very bold but not very precise. He just basically said, if I remember, governments should coalesce to issue a new digital currency, which they would back. I think it did not mention the backing itself, but I think that's the whole idea. So of course, the idea which immediately comes to mind is the SDR. You have a basket. There is political agreement on the weight of each currency in the basket. So it's not absurd to think that you could have a synthetic SDR which would be backed by the different governments. Again, the devil is in the architecture itself. Who would back it? Under which legal arrangement? And would you be sure that when you hold that synthetic digital currency, you are holding something which is totally equivalent to holding dollars, euro, renminbis, and the like?
Yeah.
But
okay,
yes,
thank you.
The whole architecture is the same.
There are a few more questions, so we have to. Well, we can address a few more. And then maybe we'll try to package them a bit together. There was a question from Austria. So Georg is saying, Austria recently saw a discussion on enshrining use of cash in the constitution. Okay. What seems more important to me, can a country government by law ensure its citizens a right to an anonymous means of payment, digital or cash? I think we're entering there the legal rights discussion.
So, the anonymity question, I think, I have an opinion as a citizen, but it's not worth more than one opinion as a citizen. So I think as citizens we should ask for a discussion on that. We should not let that anonymity question be settled by technicalities and regulations. I think it's a real one. Second, cash versus digital tokens. Yes, it's very much the same, but not exactly the same, right? So for central bank digital currency has to get a very strong technical infrastructure to work. You've got to get the terminals, and you have to wonder what's going to happen if you have a natural catastrophe, which is something everyone should consider. If you work in a central bank in the area of currency and banknotes, you always think of that. You always think, how am I going to deliver the currency if there is a problem? And so this is not an easy question. Can we face the same safety and security and reliability with a digital central bank currency as we have with cash? I'm not sure. And I understand very well that some central banks and some governments will try to legislate or regulate the use of cash in a way that cash would not totally disappear from transaction. But I think most authorities are a little bit schizophrenic on that. They don't want to prohibit cash, but at least in the countries I know, most authorities are not comfortable with the anonymity of cash. So I think we are facing a truly societal choice here, as always when technology changes. But we should not put it under the rug. We should discuss it.
Okay, I think there are two questions that go a bit hand in hand. One is by Riccardo Vincente, which looks at financial stability, and another one is more looking at monetary policy. So I think Ricardo is saying there seems to be an implied trade-off between financial stability and innovation, and surely there are many good examples that financial innovation has brought instability. Do you think innovation in digital money is more or less likely to bring financial instability than other major financial innovations?
Oh, that's a very difficult one.
I'm pretty sure when the credit card was invented, I mean, central bankers were also they were clearly supervising and watched it with some impatience and close interest. So there have been several waves of financial innovations in the past.
So let me give two partial answers. The first one is about electronic money. And electronic money now, e-money too, so-called e-money, which is the right-hand side of the graph I showed, has been very binarily, very softly regulated up to now, and because the amounts were very small. If you look now at the statistic about e-money in the European Union, they are just negligible. But my guess is that's going to grow very fast. And so the regulator will be faced by the kind of, trade-off between e-money and banks. And of course, e-money may do maturity transformation. Libra has been clearly saying that they will invest part of the proceeds of issuance of tokens into financial assets. Everybody wants to get senior age one way or another. So if you have maturity transformation for e-money, then you have all the financial stability issues which are associated with maturity transformation, and you have to wonder. First question. Second question: do you want e-money to have the same protection as banks in terms of deposit insurance? Second question. So you have a lot of questions of financial stability which may arise if e-money complement or substitute to bank deposit. So from that point of view, yes, there are specific financial. It's both old and new. I think I remember discussing with some BIS former colleague, and the BIS told me, we are confident we have the conceptual tools to deal with it. And I think they're right. They're right. They do. Okay. But those conceptual tools, those conceptual tools may have to be slightly adjusted to the technological reality. And the second question, and on this I have a personal view, is whether CBDC would create specific risks for financial stability because it would make runs easier. And I said, maybe, but run is the counterpart of the fact that we have all access to public money. And trying to prevent or prohibit runs is trying to prevent or prohibit our access to public money. And if we don't have access to public money, of course, we don't have runs. But then the private money that we have has not the same quality. It's not the same kind of money that we have now. And so the trade-off is clearly there. And I think personally, I'd rather have a private money convertible into public money with the possibility of runs than the reverse.
Okay, thanks. There was a question, I will just use a fragment of it, where Samuel was asking about the monetary policy effectiveness in the context of cryptocurrencies or cryptos. Has there any serious work been done on this in the past? I don't know, inflationary effects, for example.
Okay, so cryptocurrencies themselves, like the Bitcoins, if they were to expand, they are true outside money. So it's a new outside money denominating in a new unit of account. So let's say it represents 40 or 50%. If we think of a situation where it represents 50% of the transaction and 50% of the holdings of money, then of course, monetary policy effectiveness is heavily compromised. So monetary policy effectiveness depends, of course, on the transmission mechanism, but it also depends on people counting and contracting in the unit of account that the central bank controls. So if there is emergence in an economy of a unit of account that the central bank does not control through, for instance, digital dollarization, then monetary policy is less effective. So what I found looking at that is that a lot of people had concentrated on the transmission mechanism, and the transmission mechanism is there. There's no doubt. Digitalization does not impede the transmission mechanism, but it may create a situation where the unit of account is weaker, and the weaker unit of account by itself means monetary policy is less effective.
Thank you.
I hope it's not too theoretical.
No, it's very clear. So there were two questions which I think we're getting at the same point, which is Foteini's question and Valeria's question, where they were asking about the link between digital currencies and money laundering, simply. And I think that's also a point that, if I recall well, Warren Buffett was raising a few weeks ago.
So that's clearly the major concern. The use of data, privacy, money laundering. And of course, because transferring digital money is much smoother and easier than transferring physical money, those risks are much higher. This is perfectly true. So, as you may know, in July 2018, so a little bit more than a year ago, the Chinese authorities have taken very important measures to ensure that they could monitor all the transactions which occurred in those two big e-money networks operated by Tencent and by Ant Financial. I don't know whether the other governments will go that far, but clearly this is a major issue.
Okay. Very good. I won't ask you how to fix it now.
I'm not a specialist in money laundering. I have no big idea on that.
Okay. Very good. So I don't know if there is any burning question that you wanted to address. It's difficult to speak and read at the same time, I know. But perhaps I invite you to have a brief look, and then I would recommend that we go again through the poll results and have a closing analysis of this.
No, I think
there is a question on taxation from Poilano from South Africa. Hello, Poilano.
Let's say in general, I think when we talk about financial regulation, there is always a trade-off between efficiency and other objectives, whether they are stability or integrity. And my guess, my hunch is that digitalization sort of make that trade-off more difficult and more challenging. And up to now, authorities could sort of hide themselves and say, well, it's only a question of payments, you know.
Yeah.
So we want competition in payments. We want, and we keep the money authority for ourselves. So that has been the dominant philosophy over the last 3 or 4 decades. Strong competition in payments, and the PSD2 in the European Union is basically inspired by this kind of philosophy. We want the maximum competition in payment. Behind that, there were two assumptions which I think are being challenged. First, that you can have competition in payment without any monetary effect, and I think this is being challenged.
Yeah.
And second, that competitors in payment would be small. There will be small animals who sort of buy the legs of the big banks. But now we see that there are even bigger animals entering the payment field. So I think, at least as Europeans, we have to think very hard of the kind of trade-off we want between competition, stability, and integrity. And the sooner we grapple with it, the better we are in the future.
Competition, stability, integrity. That links up to actually a last question that we may pick up, which was about who should supervise and regulate digital currencies, because you can hear, let's say, DG Comp, of course, being interested in, or being in a way actually competent and relevant to supervise, to regulate at least, but then you could also wonder whether ESMA or the SSM, I mean, or the ECB, who actually should supervise and regulate cryptocurrencies. Is this clear in the EU?
I don't know about that, and I would not venture to make a recommendation. But I think the sooner, and I think it's happening right now. I think Libra had that very beneficial effect that central bankers realized that they could not dismiss the whole issue as a fluke, like they did for cryptocurrency. You know, cryptocurrency was sort of young tech people fantasizing about creating money, and that was not very serious. Now I think people are realizing it's serious. So whether it should be one institution or the other, in the last few days, you've seen that authorities responsible for privacy in many countries have taken many initiatives regarding Libra. The Commission has taken initiative and sent questionnaires. But there are, as you said, Pierre, there are many financial stability issues behind, and there are many monetary issues behind. Mm-hmm. And if you project a situation where 1/3 of the transaction in the euro area is denominated in a currency which is not the euro, then I don't think it's it's just a kind of imagination on my part. I don't think that will happen. But suppose it happens, then the central banks cannot stay indifferent.
Yeah. Okay.
This is a big question.
It will stay on the agenda, of course. Okay, so it's 2:00, but if you would be willing to just glance and if you'd like to comment on one of the poll results, if you move up on the chat box, you will see the poll result 1, 2, and 3. Perhaps we can pick one that lies closer to your heart and just have a few last concluding minutes on this.
I think what I'm amazed is that the answers of the two first polls are pretty balanced, right? Mm-hmm. Which means it's a very, very interesting topic right now. That is the moment to debate it, that you could argue with equal forcefulness in both directions of the questions, in both answers of the questions. And I found that actually very encouraging. It means people are starting to think about it, we're all starting to think about it, and we're all pondering arguments. And we can see that at this stage, the arguments are pretty balanced. And I'm amazed that, actually, I'm very surprised that the answer to the second poll is as balanced as it is. Mm-hmm. Because if you read the press, if you read the public statement, there has not been one positive comment on Libra in the financial press or in the comments by authorities. And I think the people who are participating to that conference have a much more balanced view than the one we hear in the media. I found that extremely interesting. And then, of course, the answer to the third question, again, I'm surprised by it because I would have expected to be more balanced. And if anything, tilted in the other direction, that people would say just the technicalities.
Yeah.
And I share the view of the 72% who said it's going to be a big change. But I'm an old man, and I guess most of the people who answer that question are 2 generations behind me. And I think they may have a better grasp than many people who are sitting in an authority position about what's happening.
Yeah.
And again, that's kind of encouraging.
Interesting. Thanks a lot. So the seminar is it's about to end. Really, Jean-Pierre, thanks a lot for your time, dedication, energy, and for sparking our intellectual interest and also practical interest, because it's going to affect us in different ways.